It's a very capital intensive.
Exactly. You're talking about hundreds, maybe even in some cases, like of the big players like Foundry and Ample, like thousands of BTC in your reserves, and they can get depleted very quickly. So you're talking about extremely capital incentives, extremely risky business. So what I think will happen is we'll see more and more concentrations to few players who will have good enough capital and gonna have a good enough team and good enough upsell and a good enough risk appetite to be serving that market. So currently we see Antpool and Foundry, top two pools in the world, and they collectively have something like 50% of the hash rate. I don't think this will change.
Hi, Christian. How are you?
Hello, I'm doing great. It's Monday. Bitcoin still didn't die, and I'm about to talk about Bitcoin mining, what we love the most at Brain. So I'm doing pretty good.
Good, good. Can you present yourself briefly and your companies?
Sure. So my name is Christian. I run marketing here at Brains. I'm a chief of propaganda. Simply put, I'm a CMO, chief of marketing. At Brains, we're a software company since 2010. We're the oldest mining pool in the world. We've mined over 1.3 million Bitcoin. So we're the OGs of the Bitcoin mining, you can say. So we focused on bit software for Bitcoin miners. So our clients are the people with the machines that mine Bitcoin, and we provide them software tools. So we're software development house. But recently we started doing also hardware, because all we think about is Bitcoin mining and Bitcoin miners. So naturally we keep adding the tools to provide to Bitcoin miners. So everything Bitcoin mining related, that's Brains basically, and we're based in Prague, Central Europe.
Okay. Before going to Brain's business model, can you tell us about your Bitcoin journey?
My Bitcoin journey. So I was completely outside crypto 6 years ago. I was working for the Big Four, classic story, doing IT auditing for KPMG, and then my story, very very bluntly put, I came for the greed. I stayed for the revolution. So literally, I came to the crypto realm, buying all the ICOs. Wanted to become quick rich and buy all the Lambos. But then the more you learn about the whole space, the more you learn about the principles and values of Bitcoin. That's why literally I stayed. So came for the greed, stay for the revolution, and that's my journey basically.
That's a nice motto. Came for the great state for the revolution. Okay, and and Brains. So you've been operating the oldest Bitcoin mining pool. Can you explain briefly to our audience who's like not
Sure.
proficient Bitcoin miner, how does a mining pool works?
It's very simply put. So in order to mine Bitcoin, you need like powerful computers. Simply put, so the ASIC machines, powerful computers. It's very simple concept of a pool mining pool. It's like you combine the forces together. So let's say you have 10 machines, I have 20 machines, and mining pool is just simply putting all the power together, and then we mine as one. Let's say thousands of users on our pool, and we jointly together mine the Bitcoin, and then we divide the rewards. The more hash power, the more compute power you give to the pool, the more rewards we give to. It's a very simple concept of you put together the resources and divide the rewards reaped. So it's just in order to stabilize the rewards and stabilize your cash flow. That's why the concept of mining pool was invented in 2010, and it's currently the standard. So like if you're running a professional business operations, like mining Bitcoin for profit in data centers, you have to mine in a Bitcoin. The Bitcoin mining, it's so big and so professionalized these days that you cannot mine Bitcoin on your own. Of course there's some, but it's more of a lottery mining for people at home, trying to solo mine a Bitcoin block. But it's completely like niche hobby things. But all the professional players, we're talking about millions and millions of powerful computer that are very expensive. So you have to mine in a pool in order to stabilize the cash flow, to work with the rewards in time.
So basically, by combining your computing power with others, you increases the probability of mining a block and therefore getting its rewards. Whether if you're mining on your own, you're gonna have a very low probability but very high return eventually. So
exactly,
this is like where you're smoothing your payoff in a sense that you're gonna be guaranteed for each block to get a certain percentage of this block, and therefore have a visibility on the rewards you can get on a constant basis when you join a mining pool, rather than if you're doing it yourself, you're gonna mine maybe once per day or once per month or once per week, so you
exactly,
cannot have any visibility about
exactly.
your outcome, and that's why mining pools were created.
Exactly. Very simple. Yeah, exactly like that. Because, as a big operations, you have monthly electricity cost, you have employee cost, you have so many costs that you have to cover. Now imagine that, let's imagine, as a solo miner, you would mine a block once every year, let's say. And it gets very difficult to, to raise money, to keep growing, to pay for the employees. So yeah, very simply put, you put together the hash power of all the miners, and so that you can be paid every single day, so you can work with the cash flow, plan better, grow better. Yeah.
Okay, and you operating a mining pool, basically, you're just operating a software system that captures the mining power and plugs it to the network and gives the reward and take like a commission out of it.
Yes, exactly. So we run like servers all around the world. So it's always important to be close to where the mining facilities are. So you can imagine we have a server, like a server room in Brazil. We have server room in several places in the United States, and we just collect or we distribute the work. We tell the miners these machines gonna work on these hashes. These machines gonna do this and that. Then we collect the work and like we coordinate the jobs, so for example. So just imagine we're the coordinator, and we say this miner is going to work on this miner is going to work on that. We coordinate all the efforts, and then when we mine the block, we distribute the reward. So we run the servers all around the world. We coordinate the work, and then we distribute the rewards. Yeah, this is our job. And yes, for that we keep commission. The standard commission on the FPPS pool is a 2.5% of the mine rewards.
Okay, so how does one mining pool differs from the other?
Very tricky question, I'm gonna tell you. To be absolutely honest, mining pools are very commodity software these days. It is very, very difficult to differentiate yourself. To be absolutely honest, it's a fee war, because mining pool in its essence is very, very standardized software that, like, the market has been sort of set and baked like a few years ago. Like, I would say this one cycle before is where we all the innovation sort of saw. So yes, there are here and there like small features. For example, we launched as the first mining pool in the world last year or this year, early this year, lightning payouts. So our miners can receive their payouts, like the rewards, via lightning networks, which means zero minimums, instant, and zero fees. But this is sort of like a very small feature for retail miners or for the smaller guys. When you talk about you have a big facility, thousands of miners running, there is really what you just care about, the fees that you pay on the pool, and you care about the team that you work with. So that's the core of mining pool. And then what happened in the previous cycle, so before this halving, sort of pools are raised to zero. It is that competitive, that standardized industry, that all the pools are looking for new ways where to upsell, where to make the money. So think about pools more of a, not like the core business anymore, but think about it as a core user base where you have to offer other services to make the money. So for example, our strategy was we went with other software for the miners. So we started doing firmware, which is like the operating system that is running the machines. And we say, yes, mine on our pool, for example, for free, but if you use our firmware, which gives you some other like benefits, you will charge you on that. Other pools, for example, let's mention Foundry, the biggest American pool, or the second largest pool in the world. They went in the direction of, okay, you can use our pool for free, but we're going to charge you on financing deals. We're going to provide the financing, we're going to provide you with insurance, we're going to provide you with hosting, and we're going to charge you there. So absolute honest question answer is, pools are very, very boring, standardized. like a commodity software, where the core principle of it is a user base. So you have a user base where you try to figure out new services, new software to upsell to your user group.
Okay. Um, so that's why you are expanding into Bitcoin mining yourselves. So you're offering Bitcoin mining as a service, or on your own you're doing it?
So we're doing some mining, but very little. We just do for like testing purposes. We focus more on the other software. So just this year, we did a classical acqui-hire. Like we acquired a company, we bought the team, we bought the technology in order to get into like a mining management farce software. So it's a you're running a big data center and you need a software that would remotely control all your machines. So you can restart, you can change the configuration, you can change the power settings of your fleet of miners. So that's one of the software that we're just entering the market this year. What we entered 3 years ago was or 4 years ago was a custom firmware. So that's the operating system that runs the machines. So sort of our pool is like a user base where we have several thousand miners all around the world, and we just keep adding the other useful software. So you're creating like a stack, so you can come to the mining farm and say, hey, I can offer you from operating system running the machine up to the through pool, through configuration software to the control and curtailment of your mining farm. So that's our journey. So offering more of the software tools, but other we've seen. So for example, Poolin in the past, they did some financial services that it didn't go that well for them, but that's another story. But really, so everybody's looking for like new ways to make money on the pool user base.
And since it's a very competitive industry, why and the economies of scale are important because you have the more machines you have or the more power you have, the more chance you get to get the mining block. So, has there been any concentration or acquisition between mining pools and why they don't converge to one?
Huh. Also interesting question. So I really think that like the pool landscape is changing a lot. If you look at the top 10 mining pools just 3 years ago, just 2 years ago, you'll notice many names don't exist anymore. And there are completely new names in the top 10 list. So it is changing a lot. And we are seeing quite a big concentration around few pools. I think we'll continue see this trend. As a Bitcoiner, I'm not, of course, I would like to see a little bit different case, but also when you understand the incentives what are like creating this situation, I don't think it will change. Because let's start with, in order to be a pool, you have to be of certain size to serve the purpose of a pool. If you have 0.1% of the market, you're not a pool. Like you're not big enough to serve the purpose of stabilizing the rewards. So there's gonna, like, if you think about it, don't quote me on the number, but I think it's like 2.53% of the total network in order to like rationally be serving the purpose of the mining pool. So out of that, you're gonna calculate that there's just certain like we're gonna just see like 10 pools ever, because the hash rate, it just, you cannot split the hash rate in so many ways. You will never see 50 pools. So that's first thing. Second thing is, it is a very risky business. So because there's something called FPPS, that's the standard how miners are paid these days. So it works like in the previous system, you're mining as a pool, and whenever you hit a block, but just in that moment when you hit the block, you distribute the rewards. But then some of the pools, like many years ago, we're talking like 8 years ago or maybe even more, they introduced something called FPPS, which says we're gonna be paying you out on every second as if we're finding the block, with the probability that we would see with our percentage of the hash rate if, on the 100 lakh probability. What I'm a little bit more simply put, if we're gonna mine that day a little bit more blocks, we're gonna put that profit into our reserves. If we're gonna mine a little bit less blocks, we're gonna pay you out from our reserves. So that's a standard how all the mining pools or vast majority are paying out. We switched to this method last year.
So it's a very capital intensive.
Exactly. And it's so you're talking about just on you're talking about hundreds on maybe even in some cases like of the big players like Foundry and Ample, like thousands of BTC in your reserves, and they can get depleted very quickly. So you're talking about extremely capital incentives, extremely risky business. So what I think will happen is we'll see more and more concentrations to few players who will have good enough capital and gonna have a good enough team and good enough upsell and good enough risk appetite to be serving that market. So currently we see Antpool and Foundry, top two pools in the world, and they collectively have something like 50% of the hash rate. I don't think this will change. I think we'll see more and more. So I think we'll see like 3 to 4 core pools
But
who
why not
have
one?
um there are still some. We might see that. I don't know. I'm just thinking out loud now. We might see that, but I don't
My
think so.
opinion is that is the most dangerous, I would say, part in Bitcoin.
Hmm.
Like having the mining pools concentrating to one, and therefore the mining pool operating be able to modify the code basically.
So the biggest risk would be them dictating what the blocks are. So I'm not concerned about them modifying the code because we've seen in the past, like in 2017 with the SegWit wars, miners do not control the network. Like miners control what the block templates look like. So theoretically, if we had ant pool running all the network and CCP would come to them and say, hey, but you start filtering these transactions, that is a valid concern to me. But there are, first of all, we're gonna see competing. Like we're not gonna see 10 big pools, but I think we're gonna still see 2 3 entities competing with each other. First of all, different geolocation, legislative region that they will operate in. We already see that. We see Antpool, a big Chinese group, versus like Foundry, like the North American number one. So we already see that. I don't think that there will be consolidation into one, but we'll see like 2 3 4, maximum 4 competing entities. There are still ways to work with this. So first of all, I want to emphasize to any viewer that the beauty of Bitcoin is that the incentives are very structural in a way that you're very motivated to play according to the rules. Because if you follow the rules and if you don't play a bad actor, that's where you gain the most. So that's the beauty of Bitcoin. Like all the incentive structures are set that nobody's like incentivized to like do bad in that system. So that's the like core, that's the beauty that I like the most about Bitcoin. But of course, like it's a scale, it's not a utopian system. It's still, there are things to improve. So for example, there's something called Stratum V2 that we're co-authors. It's a new mining protocol that is already existing. It's being still developed. It's a long-term play to make it implemented worldwide, but that would allow new use cases where the miners themselves could be making the blocks and the block templates and say what transactions they want to see in the blocks. And there, so of course it's not a silver bullet to anything, but it will create new use cases, new business opportunities. So think for example that there will be I'm just like theoretically, right? Imagine that there is a ant pool run by CCP and there are censoring transactions, right? Then imagine that there is Foundry, North American pool, and free market, and they would implement Stratum V2, and they would say, hey, we're just a marketplace, and we offer as a service, as a paid service to all our clients, meaning miners, that the miners can themselves create block templates with their preferred transactions, and then there's going to be some kind of marketplace where we're going to accept the template offered by the miner and we're going to mine it. So I really look forward to how it's gonna play out because it's gonna be very interesting, and it what makes me hopeful and not quitting this industry. I'm staying because I believe in Bitcoin. That's why I'm here. As I said, I'm here for the revolution. It is. We all see challenges. We see challenges every day. But the beauty of Bitcoin is that the incentives and incentive structures are so well put on all the participants in the network. So there will be a way. Like the participants are motivated themselves to find a way and work through the problem. So that makes me hopeful, and that makes me, not quit and join the big four again.
Okay. You mentioned like two big mining pools, one in
Hmm.
the US and one in China.
Hmm.
Um, Actually, and while I've been interviewing a lot of people on this podcast, I noticed a big lack in Europe. So, from a mining pool perspective, how do you see that?
So we're Prague based. So we're in Central Europe. We're in European Union. We're the oldest, but yes, we're not the largest. We're still in top 10, but we were way smaller than the North American and Chinese players. Um, I think that the situation for proof of work in general, of course, I believe like Bitcoin mining is the only proof of work that makes sense, but that's another discussion. Like the environment, legislative environment here is not ideal because we, of course, we can argue, hey, Bitcoin mining is not made to be done everywhere anytime. Bitcoin mining is a smart thing that can, incentivize renewable energy build out, can stabilize the grids, work as on demand demand source. Um, and all of that. So Bitcoin mining is not made. So it's made that in some places, in some particular times, it makes sense to use Bitcoin mining. So I'm not arguing that we have to see mining, outside of Prague or outside, I don't know, Paris. I'm saying that there are some situations. Let me give you examples. So I was flying to the UK, and there are large offshore wind farms, like insanely big. And I was just thinking, like, just by seeing that number of the wind farms, and them being like in pretty remote locations, it was like pretty far offshore. I was thinking like how often does the energy produced there go to waste? And I did quick Google, and it was about like 40 to 60% of the wind energy offshore of UK is wasted. Like it doesn't have a buyer. So that is exact situation, like exact single moment where I say this is where Bitcoin mining is green and will save the planet. It's not boiling the oceans, it's doing the contrary. Because if you think about it, you can have, let's say, for the 40%, I think it was a higher number, but doesn't matter. Let's say 40. For the 40% of the total produced wind farms offshore in the UK, you could have a buyer of the last resort. You can have a, of course, very cheap, but it's not wasted, and you can sell it to the buyer of the last resort, who can be the Bitcoin miners, and you're making bigger profits, which then can again finance the quicker build out of the new infrastructure, of the battery, maybe battery infrastructure, or the new solar and wind infrastructure. So my point is, Bitcoin mining is very useful in certain places in certain time, but we see we're very, very slow and too rigid in Europe. So that's on one side. The legislation, the education, it should go further, because we don't have proper environment to have the miners operating in Europe. And then logically, if you don't have the miners here, all the companies, making the software, making the services for them, will not be based here. So, for example, yes, we're historically from Prague, but we have 90% of our customers are North American, or 80% are North American, 20% would be South American. So we just have basically the like dev team based in Prague, or the all the business people or the technical support people. They're North American. So I think the way is, we need more education on the political level here in Europe. We need more people voicing the fact that what are the clear benefits of Bitcoin mining. It is not here to make few people rich and boil the oceans. On the contrary, I think there are very, very useful things, such as energy, like energy grid stabilization, renewable energy production, like incentivization. So there are clear benefits of Bitcoin mining, but we're too rigid here in Europe. and something has to change about this. So that's why I see Europe as the, we're the old continent in some sense, and I'm not proud of it. I'm from Prague. I love it here. I want to see it change, but there's a lot of work in front of us. So we just have to keep on going, I guess.
And I understand that we are the old continent, but at the same time, there's a lot of pro renewable energy incentives, and like Europe is leading the way on renewable energy and a lot of measures pro green. And what's really weird is like when you find this technology that is an incredible tool for these new renewable projects, they start by banning it instead of promoting it. Which brings me basically to my question, which is a human psyche, I would say,
Hmm.
question, in the sense that the first reflex of a human being is say, oh, Bitcoin mining consumes energy, so it's bad. If
Hmm.
we shut it down, then no energy consumed. Perfect. Ideally,
Hmm.
the whole world should shut down. It will become
Hmm.
green and mission accomplished. Which is kind of strange because nobody says that, but at the same time, everybody's thinking that, and that's why you have the regulatory measures that we have seen in Europe that are not banning but almost banning Bitcoin mining. So how do you explain this psychological dysfunctional brain that we have basically?
I yeah, that's a big one. So I think there are several factors. Like I want to subscribe it to ignorance, not malice. So I think just basically more education on every level is needed. It was the same with me. I just didn't know. I just heard exactly there's some Bitcoin, funny internet money, and there are some people in the garages, mining with powerful computers, anything electricity. So I understand it because I had the same misconception. You just hear few things and you just think, yeah, who needs some funny internet money and who needs computers to be running? So I get it. So for me it was education, education, education. So also that's the reason I'm gonna do a shilling here. But that's the reason we started doing some of the education. So we started producing, like, this is the Bitcoin mining handbook, and of course you can buy it on Amazon on our shop. But I'm showing it because you can download it for free. Braiins.com/books. You can download and learn about why proof of work matters and how it can work and how it can well help the system. Also, the next one, Bitcoin mining economics, is like it literally shows maybe how it can work very smartly with intermittent sources. And it's about, so all the information is out there, but we just need to educate more. I think that's number one. Like that's the single most important reason. The same story as I just didn't know, and it took me a lot of education. It took me a lot of hours spent to learn that. But I think as the industry is maturing, you have ETFs, you have new publicly traded miners, you have, like, we are professionalizing, we're growing. It's like, 6 years ago it was really the wild west. Some people, nerds in the garages, mining and developing code. But I think we're going entering into new era of Bitcoin. Professionals, professional teams, professional companies. So I think it will get better and better. So I'm hopeful. I'm definitely hopeful, but there is a lot of work in front of us. And then let me also say, there are other parties who have other interests and other incentives to fight Bitcoin. It's no tinfoil hat, conspiracy theory. It's as simple as other companies who have other motivations want to fight Bitcoin. If I'm on the team that is backed by VC money, and I'm developing a non proof of work coin that is funded by VCs, and I want to see it succeed, I have on my agenda to work against proof of work. Because if proof of work and number one proof of work coin Bitcoin gets hurt, I have bigger chance that my solution will win. So it's like, and there is no conspirational theory. It's like you're leftist or rightist. It's like if you're on one side of the camp, you're fighting the other one. So that is also creating some tensions, or like, but that's the free market. So, like, don't get me wrong. I'm not talking about any like extreme conspiration. I'm just talking about free market. There are groups and companies who have different incentives, who have different plans. So, and they make it just a little bit more difficult for Bitcoin to succeed. But I believe Bitcoin is here to stay. I think it's a revolution in monetary system. and Bitcoin has to survive all these attack vectors. Otherwise, it's not the solution. So I say, bring it on, because Bitcoin has to survive all this to prove itself that is the solution.
Okay, good. I think it's well wrapped up. I really commend the audience to read those handbooks. Myself, I have read them, and I have been
Please,
following closely, I would say, all the education material on your website, which
love it.
is very complete and very detailed. And for me, it's like one of the best educational materials there is out there on Bitcoin and Bitcoin mining in general.
Thank you.
So,
Really appreciate it.
so really well done, great work, especially that it's free, which is also great. And I'm going to wrap it up now. Thanks a lot for
Sure.
joining the show, and good luck for your future endeavors on Braiins, and keep us posted if you have any new developments coming on.
Thank you very much for the invitation. And thank you for your work too. Jointly together, the decentralization of marketing of Bitcoin works. So thank you too for your time and efforts.
Okay, take care.
Thank you. Cheers.